For over a century, the official files have asked one question: who was Jack the Ripper? It's a question that has led to 1,000 books and 1,000 dead ends. But as we dig deeper together, we realize that's the wrong question. The real mystery isn't who the monster was, but the machine that built him. This is the story of that machine. Our story begins not with a murder, but with a transaction, a last, desperate attempt to earn the fourpence needed for a bed. "See what a jolly bonnet I've got now," she said. To understand the terror, we must first understand the territory. This wasn't the London of postcards. This was Whitechapel, an abyss, less than a square mile, yet home to nearly 80,000 souls, packed into sprawling, anonymous lodging houses. The journalists of the day called it a labyrinth, and they were right. It was a chaotic maze of gaslit main roads that quickly dissolved into countless courts and passages. Alleys plunged into a darkness made deeper by the legendary London fog. Now, let's look closer at the layout together. At first glance, it's just chaos. But do you see this small, dark passage right here? We almost missed it. A perfect artery for an escape, a place for a shadow to disappear in seconds. This intimate knowledge of the city's hidden veins was the killer's first and most powerful weapon. The city itself was his accomplice. A predator is defined by its hunting ground, but that ground is useless without its prey. The official police reports list 5 women, the canonical 5. In the sensationalist press of the day, they were dismissed with a single damning label. But as we pull back the layers of ink and prejudice, we find the truth of who these women were is far more complex and far more tragic. These were not statistics, they were human beings. Let us meet them. Our search begins with Marianne Nichols, known as Polly. A blacksmith's daughter and a mother of 5. By the autumn of 1888, her life had unraveled, leaving her estranged from her family and living night to night in the common lodging houses. We know that on her final night, she was turned away for lacking the 4pence for a bed. Her last known words, spoken with a tragic optimism: "See what a jolly bonnet I've got now." Next, we find Annie Chapman, the daughter of a cavalry sergeant. She made a meager living selling flowers and crochet work while battling tuberculosis. The police reports note a small, personal detail, one that's easy to miss. She was known to wear several cheap rings, not on her fingers, but threaded on a piece of ribbon around her neck. A last attempt, perhaps, to hold on to something of value in a world that had taken everything else. Then there was Elizabeth Stride, an immigrant from Sweden. The records are murky, but they suggest a life of great potential. Some accounts say she once ran a coffee house with her husband. We know she was literate. But she, too, was eventually consumed by the Whitechapel abyss. Her story ends abruptly, her murder less savage than the others. It leaves us with a haunting question. Was the killer interrupted, or was this something else entirely? The same night, the killer struck again. His victim? Catherine Eddowes. Described as cheerful and vivacious, she and her partner, John Kelly, were trapped in absolute poverty. We know from inquest records that on her final day, they had pawned Kelly's boots just to buy food. Hours before her death, she was arrested for public drunkenness and then released by the police back into the dark streets, directly into the path of the Ripper. And finally, we come to Mary Jane Kelly, the youngest and the most enigmatic. Her past is a collection of unverified stories of a life in Paris, of a husband lost in a mining disaster. Unlike the others, she had a small private room at Miller's Court, a fragile shield of domesticity. It was here, behind a locked door, that the Ripper's reign of terror reached its horrific climax. The privacy she had fought for became her tomb.
Five women, a blacksmith's daughter, a soldier's daughter, an immigrant, a survivor, a mystery. They were not the one-dimensional figures the press created. They were the casualties of an ecosystem that made them vulnerable, and then invisible. They were the forgotten prey. Into this abyss of terror stepped the London Metropolitan Police. Armed with little more than notebooks and lanterns, they were tasked with hunting a new kind of monster, one their rulebooks had never prepared them for. The manhunt was led by two men with two very different philosophies. We find Inspector Frederick Aberline, a local who knew the labyrinth of Whitechapel intimately. His method was classic, relentless boots-on-the-ground police work. And then we have his superior, Commissioner Sir Charles Warren, a military man, obsessed with public order. As we read the records, we get the sense he saw the panic in the city as a greater threat than the killer himself. They were fighting a phantom with primitive tools. But in the midst of the chaos, we find a spark of brilliance. A police surgeon, Dr. Thomas Bond, examining the horrific remains of Mary Kelly, provided what may be the first ever criminal profile. He described a loner, quiet in appearance, motivated by a homicidal mania. It was a stunning piece of deductive reasoning, an attempt to hunt the killer's mind, not just his body. But this hunt was constantly being undermined. Let's look at the night Catherine Eddowes was murdered. The police find a piece of her bloody apron near this cryptic message scrawled on a wall. The official story is that Commissioner Warren ordered it erased, fearing it would incite anti-Semitic riots. But look closer at this photograph of the scene. Do you see the placement of the apron piece just below the writing? We almost missed it. A vital forensic link, a victim, a location, and a cryptic message washed away before dawn. It forces us to ask a difficult question. Were they trying to catch a killer or just control a story? The killer himself seemed to understand this battle for the narrative. The police were flooded with letters, most of them cruel hoaxes. But then this arrived. Sent to the head of a citizen patrol. It came with a small box containing half a human kidney. The writer claimed to have fried and ate it. Analysis confirmed it was a human kidney, diseased from heavy drinking, just like Catherine Eddowes, whose kidney had been taken. Was it real, or a macabre prank by a medical student? we're left with a terrifying piece of evidence that the science of the day simply could not authenticate. The killer wasn't just leaving bodies, he was leaving questions.
Overwhelmed by public panic, drowned in false leads, and undermined from within, the manhunt faltered. The ecosystem of Whitechapel wasn't just hiding the killer, it was actively fighting the men who were hunting him. So after sifting through the evidence, where does our investigation leave us? We have a city that acts as a perfect labyrinth. We have 5 women made invisible by poverty, and we have a police force fighting shadows in the fog. It was a perfect storm. The ecosystem of Whitechapel didn't just hide the killer. We must consider a more chilling possibility. It created him. He was a predator, perfectly adapted to his environment. He moved through its dark veins, he hunted the prey it provided, and he was protected by the chaos it fostered. This, we believe, is the reason the killer was never caught. Catching Jack the Ripper would have meant healing the diseased city that gave him life, and that was an impossible task. The man could disappear because, in a way, he was never really there. He was a symptom of a much larger sickness. And so the files remain open. The name remains a question. But the real monster was never just a man. It was the reflection of a city's darkness, staring back at itself, a nightmare born from a place the modern world chose to forget.